Hi everybody. Today we are talking about the rights of persons with dementia. If you are a person diagnosed with early memory loss that is maybe called mild cognitive impairment or dementia or Alzheimer's or really any type of situation that affects your memory, it's really, really important for you to know your legal rights. It's also important if you are a family caregiver to understand the rights of the person you care for, whether it's your husband or wife, maybe mom or dad, or a grandparent. So if memory loss has touched your life in any way, because you've known somebody with memory loss, maybe you have a friend who's caring for a parent with memory loss. Maybe you have memory loss yourself, or maybe you are the caregiver. You will want to share this video, so stay with me. Now, when I say the legal rights of persons with dementia, you might be saying, well, Pamela, why does that matter? Why is that important? Well, I'll tell you, when something happens that puts you in a situation where you're like, wow, how on earth could this be happening? Then you'll know why it's important. It's important because as memory loss advances and a person becomes more forgetful, they eventually become unable to have a conversation like you and I are having this conversation right now. They can't express their wishes. They can't say, I want this or I don't want that. And instead of the person with dementia making their own decisions, other people, you, a power of attorney agent, a guardian, a conservator, somebody else may start making all the decisions and may start calling all the shots. And then if other people are involved in helping you care for a loved one, there can be a lot of opinions. Well, this is right. This is wrong. We should do this. We should do that. There can be a lot of disagreements. And then add on non-family members, paid caregivers, doctors, nurses, care staff at hospitals, care staff in care communities. And all of a sudden, you have a lot of people with a lot of opinions based on their own personal experiences who can be amazingly helpful or who may totally complicate care situations and cause a lot of problems. So stay with me. I'm going to share 4 definitions used by the healthcare, medical care, social care, legal community that you might not be aware of, but you must know. I will also share 2 stories of how dementia and legal rights and human rights play out in daily life situations, so that if you can't even imagine why this is important, you will very quickly see how this becomes very, very important. Because if you are a person with memory loss or you're a caregiver, it's important to make sure that legal rights are not dismissed by family members or healthcare providers or the legal system, especially if you find yourself in a position where you're disagreeing with other family members, or you're in court, probate court, chancery court, you're in litigation, or you're in a lawsuit. It's important not to find yourself in those situations. And I know because I am an expert witness helping law firms and families in many of these situations. So just take a break for a second. If this is your first time on my channel, who am I? I'm Pamela D Wilson. I am a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker with 25 years of experience I help adults and their caregivers work through the health, financial, social care, legal care, family relationship aspects of caregiving, including all those family disagreements. I also serve as an expert witness for law firms and their clients in matters of guardianship, conservatorship, dementia, Alzheimer's, care management, home care, and more. You can learn more about my professional background by going over to my website, PamelaDWilson.com, or there's a bunch of links below this video where you can find my bio, learn about services I offer, schedule a one-on-one consultation with me. Please do right now. Click below, like this video, follow my channel, share these and other videos, and comment just to say thank you or to share your story. One little comment, one little thank you helps thousands of other people find these videos and their way to my channel. So let's talk about aging and memory loss and the progression of health problems. So aging, whether or not you have a diagnosis of dementia or not, can begin to feel like choices are becoming more and more limited. Unlike when we were 15 or 20 or 25, had all these years ahead, right? All these choices, all these things going on. Until we start to reach middle age and start to have a few health problems, which everybody does, there can be this sense of, oh, it's never going to happen to me. I'll be healthy forever. Until you start to have one health concern that stacks upon another and another and another. Now you have all these worries that are kind of impacting your daily life, and really it's kind of a drag, right? Well, experiencing memory loss, unexplainable situation. It can be frightening. When somebody gets a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's, it truly is life-changing because you can't go back to yesterday before you got the diagnosis. There's no going back. Memory loss and dementia of the Alzheimer's type, or whether it's related to Parkinson's or brain injury, it's irreversible. You can't change it. You can't go back. It's progressive, meaning no matter what happens, eventually over time it will progress and get worse. And that's what scares most people. That is the scary part. Which is why it is so important to understand your legal rights and to put in place your wishes and documents and protections for yourself while your memory and your ability to make decisions today is good, while your memory is sharp, before you can't remember things and before you can't make decisions. And so why can I even talk about this? Well, in my professional career, I was a guardian, power of attorney care manager for people who progressed through all stages of dementia. And this includes people that I knew who were diagnosed very, very early. And they were very practical about the diagnosis. They wanted to make a plan, even though they said, oh my gosh, what am I going to do about this, right? There were others who were not diagnosed until very, very late, really until the point where they couldn't understand what their diagnosis was, and at that point, it didn't even make sense to talk about it because they couldn't comprehend. And then there were others kind of in the middle of this who were diagnosed, but they refused to talk about it. Not talking about dementia. Not talking about Alzheimer's. I don't have that. And some of these people were very well-educated people who just didn't want to deal with it. And so today, a large part of what I do with these videos and my education and my expert work is help families through all of these kinds of situations. So let's start with the first of the four words. The first word related to dementia and dementia care, Alzheimer's, is autonomy. Autonomy is the feeling of being in control of your life and being able to act on what you believe. We all want autonomy. We don't want anybody controlling our daily lives or saying we can't do this or we can't do that. Now, in the bigger picture of life, there are degrees of autonomy. Generally, most of us, right? We follow rules like we file our income taxes. We stop at a red light or we stop at a stop sign. Depending on where we live, we're driving on the right side of the road or the left side of the road. And we do this without a lot of thought, right? Because everybody does it. And so we may not see participating in these activities as having autonomy or losing autonomy or being controlled. The second phrase that you might hear related to Alzheimer's and dementia care is self-determination. And self-determination relates to our ability to choose. So autonomy and self-determination go hand in hand. Because when choices exist, we feel like we have more control. And when we can act on what we believe, we feel like we have more in control. So simple examples, right? You like to have cereal for breakfast. So you go to the store and there's the cereal aisle is big, right? 20 boxes, 20 choices, you pick what you want. You like yogurt, you go to the yogurt section, there's all these flavors and you pick what you want. Instead of being limited to you have 1 or 2. Do you want A or B? So when autonomy and self-determination are applied to dementia or Alzheimer's, these words take on a whole different meaning. And let me share an example of this with a lot of twists and turns. So this starts to make sense of why it's important for people with dementia and Alzheimer's and memory loss to know their legal rights and to understand. So let's say somebody's diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's. Independent all their life, managed their life, had a great career, ran a household, had children. But because memory loss is progressing, they can no longer live alone. And they don't want to have caregivers come in the house. There's no family available. So they move to an assisted living or a memory care community, and sometimes a nursing home. Now, moving out of your house to a care community can bring a lot of restrictions that you may not think about until you get there, right? So all those choices that you had when you lived at home, they're gone. The person with dementia now lives on somebody else's schedule. And because they're in a care community, they also live according to state and federal rules and regulations that govern the care community and the staff at the care community, and the medical care at the care community, and a lot of other things, right? So all that choice and decision making kind of goes out the window. In these communities, they have staff, visiting physicians, therapists, nurses, CNAs, other types of caregivers. One caregiver may have responsibility for 10 people on this certain wing of the building. So what does that mean? Well, that means that everybody has to be up, dressed, out of bed, maybe showered by 7:30 or 8 because breakfast is between 8 and 9:30. So there's a lot of rushing around in the morning. So if you want breakfast, there is no more sleeping in. Because if you have memory loss, the room or apartment that you live in isn't going to have a stove that you can cook on because you might leave it on and burn down the whole building. Many times your room may not even have a little microwave or a mini refrigerator. So the only place you're going to get food is out in the common area. Now, if you're sick, they can bring a tray to your room, but generally you got to be up, out of bed, and down the hall if you want food. And if you have memory loss, you may not remember what time of day it is. You may not even remember that you're hungry. So these care staff have to come and get you and dress you and take you out. So all those dreams of retiring and being able to do whatever you wanted, if you have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia or memory loss, that goes off the table. Because if you can't live at home, and this eventually happens to many people, due to safety concerns or availability of caregivers, you have to move. Now, in Alzheimer's and dementia care, there's a lot of what I call generally accepted principles. And so these could be similar to you file your taxes, you stop at a red light. So one belief out there is that activities and visitors are really good for people with dementia, because there is research that shows that people who are more social and have human connections are healthier and they do better. And it's good for people with Alzheimer's because it's communication. All of this visitation and socialization and activity also reduces depression and isolation, so that's good, right? But what if you were never a social person? What if you're an introvert and you like to stay in your house and you read and you watch TV and maybe you gardened and you weren't really interested in being around a lot of people? Well, now you're in this place and you're around a lot of people, which may not make you feel very comfortable. Then what if you had a family member, a brother or sister, or a child, somebody who you never got along with, and you really actually kind of had a falling out with this person? Well, now all of a sudden, because you're older and you're not well and you're in memory care, well, this person wants to reconcile with you and they want to visit and they want to see you. Now, people who don't know you or your history with this person aren't going to say, hey, do you want Joe to come visit, or do you want Mary to come visit? They're going to just let them in. And sometimes, even if you say, no, I don't want to see Mary or Joe, they may say, oh, you know what? They got memory loss. They don't know what they're saying. It's a family member. Of course they should visit. Of course it will be good for, Helen to have Joe visit, or for John to have Fred visit, right? But what happens? Because you don't like this person, and you never did, and now you have Alzheimer's and your words don't come out right, and you can't communicate, what happens is Fred shows up or Helen shows up and you become physically agitated and emotionally upset because you don't want this person anywhere near you, right? Now the staff, they're too busy, right? They're taking care of 9 other people. They don't take the time to realize that Fred or Helen is upsetting you. So what do? They're like putting notes in your chart. John and Mary, boy, they're upset in the afternoon. They're upset. We need to have the doctor give them some medication for anxiety and behaviors. Well, what happens then? You're given some kind of antipsychotic, mind-altering medication. You become mentally foggy. You don't even know what day it is anymore. You can hardly get out of bed by yourself. You are more likely to fall. And you're tired all day, so you're sleeping. So what are the consequences of that? Well, you become more physically weak and you need more help. You used to be able to walk independently. Now, maybe you need a walker or a wheelchair because you're physically shaky all the time because of these medications. You're unstable, you're weaker. And those medications that they gave you to help with this anxiety, well, they have other side effects. So now the doctor's giving you medication upon medication upon medication, and they're causing more health issues. And so did you ever think, so imagine you're this person, right? You have dementia, you cannot communicate, you're seeing all this stuff happen to you, and you can't even say a word because the words you say don't make sense and nobody can understand what you're talking about. You are absolutely horrified that all of this is happening and there's nobody who can help you. Imagine being imprisoned in a body and a mind with no say about anything. There's no autonomy. There's definitely no self-determination. And the people caring for you, they have total control over what you're doing, and they're going to do what they're going to do because there is nothing you can do. So while the words of autonomy and self-determination exist, until you put them in the context of memory loss, in a situation where a lot of guidelines and rights and everything are taken away, it doesn't make a lot of sense until you see that, right? Now, it's important to have somebody who can advocate for you, who knows your wishes because they know you, or because they have it from other sources. Maybe you wrote it down. Because truly, people with memory loss who don't have advocates, their rights can be taken away in just the blink of an eye, right? Let me share 2 more words, and then I'm going to share another example to help this make more sense. So the next word is person-centered care. And person-centered care has a lot of different meanings. And then the 4th one is called substituted judgment. So I'm going to kind of link these two. Substituted judgment means that you make choices for somebody else based on what you knew the person would have wanted or what they've written down. So kind of like a person with Alzheimer's can no longer talk, or dementia, they can talk, but it just doesn't make sense, right? But you know that mom or dad or grandma or grandpa always did this, and this is what they want, so you can speak up for them. Person-centered care means that people who care for someone prioritize what they would have wanted and how they lived their life. So maybe your parent liked to sit outside in the warm weather, or liked a certain kind of music, or maybe they like oatmeal but they don't like scrambled eggs, or maybe they like to take a bath instead of a shower, or maybe afternoon naps, right? So person-centered care means that other people, including family members, work around this person's preferences and their desires and their wishes to not interrupt their daily routine, or not make them agitated or anxious, or send people to visit who they don't want to see. Now, this is difficult if you're not living in your private home with caregivers. And sometimes if you have outside caregivers, and they may not pay attention, but it's more difficult when you're in another situation where you're on somebody else's clock and you're on somebody else's regulations. So while person-centered care is used a lot, it's actually hard to implement. So here's another story. So a spouse or an adult child who is a power of attorney, agent, or a guardian, or a conservator, at some point starts making more decisions for you if you have memory loss, or a person with dementia. Now, this power of attorney agent is not supposed to take over your life. And the guardian or the conservator is not either. They're supposed to follow instructions given to them previously, or use substituted judgment. This does not always happen. Substituted judgment means that you do what someone else would have done themselves if they could make that choice. It doesn't mean that you say, well, I think mom or dad should do this, so I guess what they're going to do, I'm going to make this happen, right? It's like, no, mom or dad would have not done that, so you don't make them do that. So it means using a person's past behaviors or habits or patterns of behavior to determine future action, as long as they were, good and positive. Not, a pattern of behavior would not be somebody who has 8 drinks a day, and so you're going to keep giving them 8 alcoholic drinks a day, okay? That's not a good pattern of behavior, but a normal pattern of behavior, right? So, and if you don't know, it can mean talking to their best friend or family or somebody to say, hey, what was their day like? What choices would they have made about this? Now, the challenge with substituted judgment is that emotions can get involved. So let's say that you're a person with dementia and your kids never really got along. You knew that there was competition there, but you really didn't want to get into it, right? And so now you've appointed one of your kids power of attorney. The other child is angry and not happy that you appointed this one power of attorney because you always favored that child. They always felt that that child got everything. So what happens is now there's a lot of jealousy. And child number 2 thinks child number 1 is doing everything wrong. They really don't know, but they think. So they go hire an attorney. And they want to sue child number 1. And that really doesn't have anything to do with you, right? It's more to do with, I hate brother or sister number 1, and they were mean to me as a kid, and now I want to just get back at them. Now, child number 1 controls your money and your care and where you live. Child number 2 wants control of all that. But that's not what you wanted, because if it was, you would have legally appointed child number 2, but you did not, right? But now It's way beyond any point where you can express preferences. You don't even remember that your kids didn't get along. You don't really see even what's happening. But what's happening is now child number 1, who you appointed, has to somehow defend themselves against child number 2, who hired an attorney. If child number 1 has money for an attorney, then this huge legal battle ensues and hundreds of thousands of dollars can be spent. If child number 1 doesn't have money for an attorney, then child number 2 can get control of your life, which you would have never have wanted. So what happens is the court can grant one way or another, right? These legal decisions impact your care and your daily life, but because your dementia has gone so far, you're not at a point where you can do anything about it. The outcome of your children disagreeing is now in the hands of attorneys and the child who has more money to fight and the skill of the attorneys hired that your children have chosen to go against each other. And in my experience, nobody ever imagines that something like this is even possibly going to happen. But it does, and I will tell you, it's very emotionally distressful for families. It can be emotionally distressful for the person with Alzheimer's and dementia. If they are at the point where they still realize all this is going on and they don't want it happening, but there's nothing they can do about it, right? So the problem in all of this bigger picture is that people with memory loss and dementia and Alzheimer's, they can be seen as this disease, not really as the person they were during their lifetime, an amazing mom or dad or, teacher, person who ran a company, somebody who was in the military. Their lifelong habits, their preferences, their wishes, well, those are kind of like pushed aside, right? Because now they can't remember anything. And so what happens is, as individuals, persons with dementia, their needs and their wants are just deprioritized, right? They're undervalued because they can't speak up for themselves and everybody else is running the show. People with dementia can lose their rights to make choices and to be heard and even to have people believe what they want because other people get involved. Doctors, adult children, staff at care communities, everybody thinks they know better. Family relationships, life circumstances, environments greatly affect people with dementia. And unless you are working with some expert like myself, who has deep, deep experience, a lot of concerns can go unnoticed, environmental situations may not be considered. There's a lot that goes into managing the care and organizing the care of a person with dementia to make sure that what that person would have wanted happens. This is why paying attention to all these 4 definitions, autonomy, self-determination, substituted judgment, person-centered care, that's why all of this is so important. What most people don't know is you have to pay attention to it way ahead of the time that things happen, right? So if you have early memory loss or any stage of memory loss and you're watching this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have to do something. Do something. Make sure that your loved ones do what you want. The way that you do that is you put it into writing, into legal documents. You have it notarized. You say, at this point, I may have early dementia, but I still know what I want and I don't want anybody changing these documents. And then you make that happen, right? The other thing is, don't assume that, all of your children are going to be good caregivers. Also consider the relationships you had with your children and the relationships that your children have with each other, because that's where a lot of this goes astray. If your kids don't get along, there are going to be problems, more than likely. High likelihood. And then we've got the bigger picture of society, right? As people age, society and the healthcare systems don't look at older people in such a nice way. It's like, oh, they're old, they're on their way out, they're going to die. Honestly, it can be a fight to get the care you need, the care you want. Sometimes you're fighting with health insurance plans to even get a medication approved, right? The lives, the dreams, the hope of people matter, no matter what age they are. Older people can become devalued, less important. And what happens is family members, outside people, outside circumstances take away all their rights. In my opinion, this is not right. So if memory loss has touched your life in any way, you know somebody with memory loss, you have a friend who's caring for a parent with memory loss, you're a caregiver for somebody with memory loss, please share this video. Please click on this video, like it, share this video, share my channel with other people. I thank you so much for being here. I'm Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. Please go to my website, PamelaDWilson.com. Lots of hope, help, support there. There's a lot of links below this video where you can find links to my online caregiver programs, my podcast, Caring Generation, my online courses, more videos, my bio, speaking information, expert witness information. Everything is below. I will see you all again soon in another video.